Okay, now I'm going to talk about history a little bit. So, I'm not talking about any particular historical event. I'm more talking about the concept of history, okay? So, what is history? Well, it's basically what happened in the past, right? In theory, history is what happened in the past. But that's not really how it works, right? Because it's not like there is some objective party who is writing historical events down and then passing them on to the next generation. What's really happening is humans are talking to each other and writing things down in the manner in which they saw the events occur, okay, in which their subjective point of views saw the events occur. So, as a story or an event gets passed down, passed through the generations, probably going to change a little bit, right? And you can make an analogy to that game of telephone, right? If you've ever played a game of telephone, it's basically where one person says something to another person, whispers in their ear, and then that person whispers it to somebody else, whispers to somebody else, and by the end of the cycle, by the end of the game of telephone, the the message that comes out is often vastly different from the message that we started with, right? And if you've ever had one of those assholes who's playing the game and they purposely decide to drastically change the message, they're kind of a bad actor in that sense, then obviously the story or the message is going to change drastically, right? So the point here is that to say that history is like a game of telephone, but history is a very long game of telephone, and certain people in that game, they have, well, every now and then there are motives behind the stories that people are going to pass down. So, just to provide one example of how this can work, if we look at, in the United States, we like to demonize socialism, right? And then we point at these other nations who tried socialism and we say, huh, this socialistic economic system cannot work because it's never worked before. Capitalism is the best system we've ever had, right? That's what people like to argue, and then they'll point at Venezuela for proof. But who's telling you to point at Venezuela, and what are they telling you about Venezuela? Well, they're telling you that Venezuela was socialist and their economy collapsed, right? They had massive inflation rates, right? But if the person telling you that doesn't also tell you that the United States basically basically sanctioned Venezuela to hell and back, if they don't tell you that the United States was perhaps, I don't know, fighting or trying to make regime changes in a country such as Venezuela or other socialist countries like the USSR, if bottom line is, if the person telling you some about some historical event doesn't give you all the context, doesn't give you all of the information, then you're not going to know what the hell happened. So just think about that when you're thinking about history, okay? Think about who wrote the history and think about what their motives may have been. Because at the end of the day, if we listen to the media all the time, and the media has a motive, to a financial motive, to create a narrative that benefits their financial motive, then you might not be getting the whole story. So, in a sense, you gotta question everything. You can't believe what people tell you just because they seem well intentioned. And by me telling you this, you could say perhaps I am not well intentioned. I am telling you to question this traditional narrative of history, and maybe I'm a Holocaust denier, or I don't know, something like that. But that's not the point. Okay, the point is that you have to question what you've been taught. You have to question even the societal structures that you've been taught are functional, because if you don't pay attention and that societal structure becomes less functional over time, and again you're not paying attention, then well, you're gonna fall into dysfunction. And you may think that you're functional because maybe it's working for you for a time, and then until it doesn't work for you, right? Until the people it's not working for, they try to tear the whole thing down. just because something's working for you does not mean it's working for everybody else. You have to pay attention to those other people, because if you're not, then those people are going to change the system to make it work for them, and that might be to your detriment. You can't think in an egotistical manner, and in all likelihood, the people who do have bad motives to tell history in such a way that is, well, manipulative, they have egotistical motives. Okay, so you have to think in a unifying manner. You have to think in a manner that doesn't just benefit yourself. Okay, you have to create a societal structure that works for everybody. And if you don't, it's not going to work in the long term. And it's anyone's bet as to when the end of that long-term cycle is. That's ultimately what we're doing here. We're making bets as to when the shit hits the fan, right? And if you can get out scot-free, you can die before that shit hits the fan, and I guess you win, right? But what about your children? What about your grandchildren? And beyond that, what if you're wrong about when the shit's gonna hit the fan? We need to basically question our entire perception of reality that has been put in our heads. You have to question every little bit, from the economic systems to all the way down to the concept of an economic system itself, all the way down to the concept of a currency itself. Okay, so I made a video a couple days ago that was discussing, it gave you a scenario between two opposing, two different communities, and one community had a currency and one community didn't. And the community that had a currency similar to ours, it devalues basically stay-at-home moms and dads, right? And I made the conclusion that this was a very big mishap in this community, because what it does is it devalues necessary labor. And what I mean by that is that being a stay-at-home mom or dad taking care of children it's necessary labor. It's a necessary thing that has to be done for society to function. But if the economy is created that devalues that labor, that devalues that basically that production process of well-raised children, then, well, that society is going to see economic imbalances that hurt its ability to function in the long run. Think about like when you were born. Just say this: when you were born, did you know what a currency was? Did you know what an economy was? The answer is no. You were indoctrinated with the belief that money is the only way to structure an economy, and it's really hard for people to imagine outside of that. Now, I'm not saying we need to abolish money. That's not the point of this video. That's not the point of the other video I made either. The point is to say that if you don't think outside of the box, then you limit your scope you limit the angles at which you can solve a problem at. So you have to think outside of the box. You have to question every little bit of knowledge that's in your brain. Okay, so when we were born, we were just blank slates. We were programmed from then on out, and you have to think about all of the things you were programmed with. You know, there's the old there's a story where the European settlers come to America and they buy land from the Native Americans, right? And the Native Americans accept the money, and they're like, why did they give us money for this land? Because the Native Americans didn't even understand the concept of ownership of land, right? I don't know if that's even a true story or not, but question the things. Question the structures of society, all the way down to the concepts of ownership, or the concepts of money, the concepts of currency. And you will begin to look at our problems in a different way. And again, I'm not saying we need to abolish money, but you need to understand what money has done to the stability of society, to the stability of the community we're trying to create. So give that a little thought. Thanks for watching.